So unlike your traditional power scaling, we're scaling how Yuji beats Megumi. At first this is going to be regular stats and calc fest. There's something more important here. Why does Yuji succeed where Megumi fails? Since this is a big claim, I'll show you the story in a way that points to it whenever I can. So, just so we have an idea of who we'll be talking about here, here's a quick refresher on the two characters we'll be comparing. Megumi is born blessed. The 10 Shadows is a top 5 curse technique. This comes at a steep cost, however. As a member of the Zenin clan, Megumi is supposedly a big deal. This is true, but really, Megumi was doomed from the start. An orphan, but he doesn't even care enough to check if his dad is dead. Gojo, his surrogate dad, tried to tell him, but even as a little kid, he didn't care. Raised as a sorcerer, the world for Megumi is already a cruel and unforgiving place. With a teenage Gojo who actually killed his dad, and the only family he has left is his half-sister Sumiki. Megumi grows up troubled, and the only moral compass he has is his sister. Unfortunately, having a moral compass is akin to being marked for death in JJK. Saving people unequally, only saving good people. That good person that Megumi says in the first episode is Yuji Itadori. Leaving this guy alive leaves the world in ruins. Yuji Itadori, also an orphan, but with no curse technique and no special clan here. Yuji doesn't even think about his parents until almost 100 chapters into the manga. Jovial and completely unaware of how the world really works, Yuji stumbles upon a finger with his friends. Yuji is like any good kid raised by his grandpa, concerned for him in the hospital. An orphan, but his grandpa would rather Yuji just have fun at his school club. Megumi is looking for a cursed object, but Yuji's friends snuck it out of the shrine already. They aren't just any club, they're the occult club. There are also some weird happenings when it comes to Yuji's school, which is already explained by the cursed object held nearby. Things are even weirder when we learn Yuji's PE teacher refuses to let Yuji not do the sport club. Anyway, we're back onto Megumi. He notices a cursed spirit and has trouble sensing where the cursed object should be, as it's a special grade. Yuji is competing with his PE teacher, but it's not really a big deal. Yuji is simply a beast when it comes to strength. This is where things get even weirder. Without some degree of sorcery going on here, people do not have superpowers in this universe. After winning and running off, Yuji goes past Megumi, with Megumi sensing the immense power that radiates from the cursed object. Yuji is back in to check on his grandpa, and this time not over the phone, with flowers and lots of complaints from his grandpa. His grandpa tries to mention Yuji's parents, but Yuji, like Megumi, does not care about his parents really. With his last words, his grandpa tells him, "With your strength, you should save people, at any cost. Don't care if they appreciate it or not. As many as you can, but even one is enough. Don't end up like me," he says, dying alone. Yuji takes this to heart, keeping this motto as much as he can, and this is when Megumi finds Yuji. He explains how the finger is dangerous, but Yuji already gave it over to his clubmates. Megumi explains that curses are dangerous, and would cause bad things to happen, like at a school. Places with lots of negative emotions, like a school, end up drawing in curses. The cursed object from earlier was actually protecting the school, as its stronger cursed energy wards off weaker curses. The special grade cursed object left so much cursed energy in just the box, Megumi thought it was the whole package. Removing the protective seals on the cursed object, this finger is bad news, with curses immediately engulfing the clubmates of Yuji. Megumi and Yuji are now faced with their first test of resolve here. With cursed energy leaking out of the building as if it were on fire, Megumi tells Yuji to stay back, using his divine dogs to clear a cursed spirit. Yuji is still standing outside, scared by the cursed energy he is unintentionally sensing. Leaning back on the words of his grandpa, Yuji was the only person who visited him, and Yuji needs to avoid this same fate. Closing in on the curses trying to eat his clubmates, Yuji doesn't hesitate to attack the curses, but Megumi does. The element of surprise, Yuji snatches his injured but alive clubmates. Megumi finishes off the curses, noting it's weird Yuji can see them. Wanting to lead people to a proper death, not like getting eaten by a curse as a teenager, Yuji gets the object out of his clubmate's pocket, a finger. Before he can hand it over to Megumi, a giant curse crawling out of the ceiling prevents him from doing so. Now Megumi is in trouble, getting injured by the curse, and unable to summon his Shikigami. Yuji is fighting the curse, but he can't win without cursed energy, so naturally, he eats the finger. Sukuna incarnates in Yuji, immediately idolizing the cursed spirit. Relishing being alive again, Sukuna wants to wreak havoc, but Yuji is able to take control somehow. This is not supposed to be how things work, as a special grade curse would usually just overwhelm its original host, more or less killing them instantly. Megumi is now faced with Sukuna. Megumi struggles with the idea of having to fight Yuji, who is awesome, but Sukuna, who is the worst. Luckily for Megumi here, Gojo comes in to save both Yuji and Megumi. Showing up just for the finger, Gojo still wants to fight Sukuna anyway here, so he asks if Yuji can swap for 10 seconds. Gojo takes this opportunity to gauge the strength of Sukuna for later. Gojo bests Sukuna for now, and now Yuji has proof that he can control Sukuna to some degree, and for this reason, Gojo lets Yuji live. He trusts that Yuji can deal with Sukuna, and his beloved student Megumi definitely wants Yuji to live here. So, as Sukuna is a present danger to everyone in the world, the Jujutsu Society would want to execute Yuji, but Gojo is capable of getting a stay of execution here. That's only a temporary measure. The fingers are indestructible and the seals are weakening, so it's a good thing Yuji can be used to dispose of them. If Yuji eats all 20 fingers and dies, the Jujutsu world is rid of Sukuna forever. It's not going to be that easy, of course, though. Yuji tells his friends about what happened and apologizes for putting them in danger, saying bye before never seeing them again. Sitting outside the crematorium taking care of Yuji's grandpa, Gojo explains to Yuji fatalities are just a commonplace when it comes to being a sorcerer. Gojo assures him he'll see horrors beyond imagination, but Yuji's resolve is unshaken by such a claim. Yuji knowing now dying wouldn't be enough. Taking in another Sukuna finger, Yuji is strong enough to not even swap. Gojo guesses that Yuji has found even more resolve, and knows Yuji is going to be an ace. Yuji is now going to be in Jujutsu High in Tokyo, as he has said goodbye to everyone who would care, as in his mind, a hierarchy based on anything other than strength is wrong. He is actually kinda right here, as not seeking out strength leaves you dead in this world. Sukuna says he'll make this brat's body his own, and Gojo will be the first person he kills. We assume this will be Yuji. We get some backstory on Sukuna, who is basically the strongest in the strongest era of Jujutsu sorcery. Also, he was a human, not a curse. Yuji is now faced with an important test. Masamichi Yaga, who is the principal of the school. Yaga is a thorough man, questioning Yuji's reason for keeping on. Yuji's very existence with Sukuna is a very real threat to the world. It's important Yuji has a valid reason to even receive training, much less not be executed here. The reason Yuji gives is how he thinks the deaths by curses are not proper, and his reasoning is that it was Grandpa's dying wish. This is simply not acceptable. Living your life on the behest of someone else just won't do. Yaga forces Yuji to fight a cursed corpse. He can do this as it's his innate technique, but it's not too important here. Yuji is getting his ass beat. Yaga explains the world of Jujutsu sorcery is fucked up. When it comes down to it, you have to be crazy and have insane amounts of willpower. It's not going to be his grandfather's fault when Yuji dies. This helps Yuji rethink his standpoint here. The combination of a tough opponent and new information is what really makes growth happen as a sorcerer. Continuing his lecture, Yaga says that if Yuji continues this way of thinking, he will curse his grandfather's memory. Yuji takes this to heart and now lives for himself, as only he can handle Sukuna, and he can never forgive himself for what happens when Sukuna gets out. Even if he has no control of how he dies, Yuji doesn't end with regrets. Yuji passes the test, joining Jujutsu High in earnest. When setting up his room, Yuji has a big poster of Jennifer Lawrence, and this is actually important for later. We get introduced to the third first year at Jujutsu High, but Nobara Kugisaki is not super important for this video. Since Megumi has already been proven to use cursed energy, Nobara and Yuji must fight some curses so Gojo can gauge how much potential they have. Yuji is still unable to use cursed energy, but with a cursed tool, which are all imbued with cursed energy, Yuji can fight. Gojo warns Yuji not to use Sukuna to fight much though, as Sukuna is dangerous and unnecessary for these curses. Yuji is able to take down a few low-level curses with ease. His physical strength is a supernatural talent, even without cursed energy, and now with a cursed tool, he can exercise curses. Gojo says that Yuji's lack of hesitation is unusual, especially since he is unused to curses. This test is about dealing with curses, but that's mostly for Nobara more than Yuji, but obviously Yuji passes too. This lack of hesitation Yuji has saved Nobara's life and the child's life here as well. Nobara helps here as well, finishing off the curse, so they pass together. With all 3 students initiated, the trio is sent out to fight a cursed wound. Nobody, not even Gojo, knows what is lying in wait for them. These first-year students are pitted against a finger bearer. Any curse that consumes the Sukuna finger, called a finger bearer, is immediately considered a special grade. So understandably, the danger here is even more real than before. This finger bearer already killed all the people present at the prison school they went to. But Yuji wants to carry a mangled corpse, as that boy's mom was worried about him outside the building. And if Yuji can't give someone a proper death, he respects the deceased anyway. Megumi is more concerned with the present danger they are in, and this is when the curse sucks Nobara into its incomplete domain. The more seasoned fighter in Megumi runs after Nobara. Now Yuji stands alone against an opponent clearly too strong for him and nearly dies in the process. With this curse hurting him and the feeling of death being imminent, Yuji is briefly able to use his curse energy. Unfortunately for Yuji, this is an accident for now, and he has to swap out with Sukuna. Letting Sukuna take the wheel, similarly to how Yuji was able to save Megumi and his friends earlier. Luckily for Yuji here, Gojo is not there to bail him out. Sukuna is not really that kind of help though. A bloodthirsty and malevolent sorcerer, Sukuna wants to kill Yuji's friends here. Sukuna obliterates the finger bearer and eats the finger, but Yuji is too shaken to take control back. With Megumi just barely succeeding in saving Nobara, he doesn't get away in time before Sukuna shows up right behind him. Sukuna opens up this fight by ripping his own heart out. Unlike Yuji, Sukuna can heal through something like this. Getting absolutely clobbered and losing another Shikigami in the process, Megumi is in dire straits. The only reason Megumi is even alive at this point is that Sukuna is curious why Megumi didn't fight the finger bearer earlier. Sukuna takes his time to admonish Megumi, knowing full well Yuji will die with no heart here when Sukuna switches back. Flashing back to Megumi's sister, she reminds him that she would rather be spending quality time with people than cursing the situation. The unfair reality of the situation is made clear when Sumiki falls ill, even though she's a good person. This unfairness is why Megumi wants to save people unequally. Only good people, like Yuji. This gives Megumi the burst of resolve to start summoning a strong Shikigami. This was impressive enough for Sukuna to swap out with Yuji. His interest now peaked. Now bleeding out, Yuji only has a few last words. As the show asked me to write this, Yuji thinks that it's a proper conviction, but his isn't wrong either. At a touching moment, Megumi tells Yuji he doesn't regret saving him, and Yuji tells him to live a long life. Yuji dies, but not really. Sukuna may want to kill people, but as he currently needs a host, he cannot let Yuji die. While his fellow students may think he is dead in the morgue, they are preparing for a competition against the Kyoto branch of Jujutsu High, and planning on going extra hard for their fallen brother. While Yuji is quote-unquote dead, he's instead embattled the Heian era sorcerer on how to be revived. In Sukuna's innate domain, a bloody mess of skulls and a giant ribcage. Now knowing of this trick Megumi has up his sleeve, Sukuna hatches a plan. Sukuna gives Yuji a pact. He can swap for 1 minute whenever he wants. Yuji will not remember this agreement, and that he will not hurt or kill anyone during this period. This binding vow is sealed by them fighting to the death, which Yuji immediately loses. Yuji pops up, now totally fine. More importantly, he gives Gojo a big high five. Gojo also decides Yuji won't be shown to his classmates because it'll be funny. Megumi and Kugisaki are both mourning Yuji in their own way, whilst they train and Yuji is finally learning how to use curse energy. Megumi brings in the name tag of that person Yuji wanted to drag to his mother, finally giving her some peace. Yuji is resolving to become the strongest. He asks the best man up for the job, the honored one, Gojo. This is where Yuji learns he doesn't have a curse technique, and this sucks since a large portion of being a good sorcerer is talent. Gojo takes the time to explain the reason Yuji was able to access cursed energy earlier was due to him being full of negative emotions at the time. It's not called cursed energy for nothing, but you don't have to be freaking out to use it. Gojo efficiently tricks Yuji into channeling his cursed energy via accessing strong emotions, as your feelings are really what push you forward, while being punched by one of Yaga's dolls if he stops channeling his cursed energy. You might already know this, but the contradictions and uncertainties that flow through Megumi are really what hold him back. Remembering Sukuna being disappointed in him, Megumi realizes maybe he really could have beat that special grade from earlier, and he learns a new ability immediately. he can phase through the darkness. 10 shadows also extend to shadows in general, as Megumi just learned. While Yuji is training, Gojo asks if he talked with Sukuna, and Yuji says yes, but he doesn't remember. Gojo seems concerned, but he doesn't know exactly what's up here. Breaking Yuji out of his training for a bit, Gojo teleports in Yuji so he can show him what domain expansion looks like. Teasing his special grade opponent Jogo, Gojo is not only fighting a significantly stronger curse than that finger bearer from earlier, but also an angry one too. Trapped in the volcano that is Jogo's domain, which is essentially just engraving your innate technique onto a barrier and entrapping other things in it. The place Megumi and Nobara fell off into was not a complete domain, as it didn't have an innate curse technique combined with the barrier. A real domain expansion would have certainly killed them, as any hits in a domain are guaranteed, minus a few exceptions. A lot more happens, but this is more about Gojo than Yuji. Anyway, Yuji doesn't get it right away, but it's important to know some of this stuff, as it comes up later.
What kind of woman's your type?
Kind of a weird opener, but it's quite fitting for Todo. Bro is weird. The thing about being fanatical is it's actually quite good for being a sorcerer, as composure is key. Needless to say, Todo is one of my favorite characters. Todo and Mai ambush Nobara and Megumi, but we will only talk about Todo and Megumi here. Todo is huge, and more buff than any 17-year-old should be. Todo wants to test who can take Yuta's place. He was the protagonist of Volume 0 and doesn't show up until the movie or after the season if you want to think about it like that. Megumi fails hard, like trying to summon a Shikigami that would have killed every student nearby, including himself, bad. So, back to the whole who's your type thing. Why does it mean anything? 1, he stole it from Yuki Tsukumo. 2, she's smart as fuck, and it's a great trick to know how strong one's resolve is. When it comes to being taken off guard by just a weird question, Megumi is stuck, mired in logic and reason, whilst he should be full of emotion and conviction. Todo can be weird and dramatic, but he's honest to himself and others. This fanatical self-belief is what really makes Todo such a beast. You don't have to make sense, all you have to do is believe in yourself, and Megumi is not it here. Todo has beaten special grades all on his own, and even without using his innate technique on curses that are not special grades. Back to the crazy part. He would have killed Megumi, but you have to be that crazy to be that strong here. Luckily, his classmates are able to save him here. So now we switch to an important character in Yuji's story, Junpei. Junpei is not a great guy, but he has rotten luck. Bullied horrendously in introduction, not wishing death directly upon his bullies, but if something terrible just happened to them, he'd be fine with that. Luckily for Junpei, Mahito comes in to kill those bullies. Mahito is a cursed spirit, and even more important, Junpei follows Mahito, and Mahito asks Junpei what he thought of these people. Junpei's mind is full of hatred for those bullies who made his life hell. His words are now the opposite of what he thought earlier. Can I learn to kill people like that?
Can I do that too?
Mahito is Junpei's mentor, and now Yuji needs another one. This guy is Nanami Kento, a grade 1 sorcerer. At the scene where Mahito killed people earlier, Nanami explains to Yuji how you can sense cursed energy, the same way you can pick up a strong curse. By sensing harder, you can pick up the residual energy left behind by curses and their curse techniques. This is used to track down Mahito. On the trail, they encounter transfigured humans, which is something created by Mahito's innate technique, idle transfiguration. So unlike Yuji's resolve to kill curses, transfigured humans are humans, at least enough to Yuji. Yaga earlier mentioned that Yuji may have to kill regular humans changed by curses, so in a way this is another part of his initiation test. Nanami takes the first one on, showing Yuji explaining your technique can empower it as well as lead to misdirection. Yuji may be a fast learner here, but his physical strength actually gets in the way of him properly using cursed energy. Since he's naturally so fast, the flow of cursed energy is lacking compared to the speed of his punches. So there's a delay. This double impact is called Divergent Fist. Takes opponents off guard with a weak initial blow, compared to the second much stronger bunch of cursed energy. Nanami sees great potential in Yuji here, as he already has superpowers, even before using cursed energy at all here. After clearing out the curses from earlier, Shoko, the school nurse and mortician, makes sure to tell Yuji the transfigured humans were already dead. Yuji is still mad anyway, which is actually helpful for him here, as these negative emotions can bolster his power. Nanami and Yuji zero in on Junpei immediately, as he was last seen at the movie theater. He was probably not a bad guy. Yuji goes off to befriend Junpei and ask questions, while Nanami goes after Mahito. The thought of the curse to leave a false trail is a sign of a special grade, and Yuji is just not ready for something like that yet. Yuji runs back first to make sure Nanami won't be reckless. This nicest is lost on Nanami for now. Junpei is now happy in his movie club. but his bullies pull up. Unlike the usual rolling over, Junpei stands up for himself, leading to another gratuitous beating. Junpei waffles to Mahito about how the opposite of love is actually not caring at all, as opposed to hating someone. This is actually just the author telling us why the power system favors the villains. Love can be countered by not giving a shit. Mahito agrees with Junpei, as love doesn't really apply to curses and curse users. Thinking that there's nothing between the soul and Mahito's clutches is kind of the whole point of this video. The heart humans possess is actually what puts a sorcerer above a curse at the same level, but that's for later. Mahito is genuinely a peculiar curse, as he experiments, in this case, on people. These macabre transfigured humans don't even faze Junpei, as he's a huge horror movie fan. In a stupid move, Junpei tells Mahito that the only thing that would bother him at this point is his mom dying. Ironically, even knowing that indifference is a better thing to go for, Mahito points out that Junpei is full of hate, not indifference. Mahito explains that he has a good knowledge of the soul, as his innate technique is soul manipulation. Its name is idol transfiguration. A natural being, Mahito believes one should simply follow their nature. No right or wrong even applies, giving Junpei free rein to do whatever or something. Yuji is coming in with Ijichi, who is the handler more or less of the school. The goal is to test if Junpei can sense spirits, and unless he can defeat that spirit by himself, don't beat him up either. If he's grade 2, Yuji will need Nanami's help, as sorcerers are stronger than just curses. Nanami fights Mahito, but the only important part is that Mahito may have started weaker than Nanami. He has lots of potential, and he escapes. A teacher that happens to have seen Junpei get beat up asks why he didn't go to what he thought were his friend's funeral, but in reality they were his bullies. This disturbs Junpei, and he was about to use a technique, but Yuji comes in. Yuji makes the teacher bug off, and he hits it off right away with Junpei as well. One more thing, even Nanami, who is a seasoned sorcerer, does struggle with killing transfigured humans. Mahito makes sure to rub it in as much as possible for every opponent he faces. For a quote-unquote natural spirit, it is unusual for the curse of humanity to be so human. This lack of true understanding of humanity may ultimately be Mahito's downfall here. Yuji just asks upfront if Junpei saw a curse at the movie theater, and Junpei lies by saying no. Yuji instead strikes up a conversation, asking him what movie it was. The scene of the crime was a movie theater for those people not watching the video and just listening here. Yuji and Junpei both like the same kind of movies. They hit it off because of this. Junpei was told by Mahito to be friendly with sorcerers, but this clearly goes beyond what he meant. Junpei's mom shows up, and she's super sweet. She's the only person who really keeps Junpei going here. Inviting Yuji over for dinner, he accepts, and a lot of bonding moments happen. Junpei's mom even tells him he can stay home from school tomorrow. Junpei asks Yuji if he's ever killed anyone, which he hasn't, and he wouldn't even kill bad sorcerers. Yuji doesn't like the idea of killing people to be an option. Without that distinction, it would be damaging to his other relationships. Junpei is having a change of heart, as literally Mahito says you cannot. It doesn't really fit with his rhetoric now. Afraid of the thought that his mom could be affected by him killing people, he resolves not to kill people. Having conveniently told Mahito's weakness, Junpei's mother is killed. This goes without saying, but it's devastating. When I heard of this for the first time, I was genuinely upset. The body was tampered with, and a Sukuna finger was found nearby, put there to make sure it was no accident. Nanami wants to go alone, but Yuji insists this time he will come too. Yuji looks back through at all the misfortune he's experienced, and through all of it he steals his nerves. Nanami warns Yuji of Mahito, who they call Patchface, as he hasn't told them their name. This warning continues onto how Yuji will be forced to kill another person at some point or another, though not yet. This plays into his worries from earlier when he talked to Junpei about this. Junpei is unsurprisingly very unhappy about his mother's death. Mahito suggests it might have been someone using a bounty hunter. This funnels the now tunnel-visioned Junpei to one possible conclusion. The rich boy named Shota, who bullied him earlier, must have done it. He was the bully in particular Junpei stood up to. We are shown that Shota is a dick right away, but this doesn't really seem apparent to the other students. Mahito casts a barrier over the school, sealing the fate of this occasion, Junpei's apotheosis into a curse user. Pitting Yuji and Junpei against each other was Mahito's goal from the beginning. With this, he could help Sukuna get a pact with Yuji. Unfortunately for Mahito, this has already happened, and Sukuna does not like meddlers. Junpei corners Shota in the gymnasium, cursing him and punching him in the face. Not caring whether his former bully is the real culprit, as in his eyes, he already did enough to deserve this. Right before Junpei can kill Shota, Yuji arrives on the scene. Junpei tells him a sorcerer like him shouldn't be here. Nanami warned Yuji not to go in again, but Yuji insists this time. Ijichi says Yuji shouldn't go in there, but he goes in anyway, of course. Yuji would never leave his new friend to fend for himself. Junpei and Yuji are now fighting. Junpei's technique is to summon a moon jellyfish Shikigami. Junpei disagrees about him saving everyone, as some lives are not as valuable to him. Yuji cannot stand for this, as these words sting even harder than Junpei's jellyfish. Tumbling out of the school now, losing the rhetorical and physical battle. Junpei is confused because the jellyfish's venom doesn't affect Yuji. Junpei did not know that the poison Sukuna emits is grades beyond that of his own Shikigami. Yuji's immune to this toxin here, similarly to how he's inoculated Junpei's logic. But gaining some composure by reopening his negative feelings about his mother's death, Junpei prepares a big attack to catch Yuji falling down. Dodging past Junpei's poor justifications the same way he dodges his last-ditch attack, Yuji strikes a devastating blow, saying the only person Junpei is convincing is himself. Giving Junpei the chance to turn it around, he asks why he's doing this, surely knowing someone is puppeting him. How could he say humans are heartless and only bound by the soul? What would his mother think of him saying that? Junpei can't reconcile the thought of people having hearts, and still killing his mother and tormenting him so much. Junpei, having a crisis of faith, attacks Yuji, who takes the blow on purpose. Yuji just wants to know what happened, promising not to attack again. Yuji had no idea about Junpei's mom, and Yuji tells him he can have a future in Jujutsu High. This is just not the story that happens. Mahito waltzes in, pinning Yuji to a wall, and Yuji urges Junpei to run, but to no avail. Mahito takes his hesitation that Junpei has about whether Mahito is good or not to transfigure him. Yuji is floored, simply just letting himself get hit by his newly deceased friend. Offering anything to Sukuna to save Junpei, Sukuna denies him. Mahito is perplexed now, assuming maybe just that Sukuna can't save Junpei. The simultaneous laughter of both Sukuna and now Mahito bring out a ferocious hatred towards curses, something that Yuji hadn't quite felt yet. With Junpei uttering his last words, Yuji is reminded of his dream of saving someone, in this case Junpei. Mahito's laughter is cut short by a right to the face. Yuji's blow strikes the very soul of Mahito, truly damaging him, something that not even Nanami was successful in. Yuji's rage radiates out of him like a fire, knowing that more than anything now, he wants to kill Mahito. Mahito is still trying to make Yuji break, so Sukuna can make a pact. But this all relies on Yuji not being strong enough to handle Mahito, forgetting only that curses don't have hearts. Yuji's heart is what puts him over the edge here. Now chasing down Mahito, striking him like a man possessed. Both of them realize they need to strategize to attack effectively. Yuji resolves to hit Mahito as much as he needs to, while Mahito morphs into something sharper. They both successfully hit each other, going from the top of the building to the ground. Yuji punches up dust, landing a destructive punch on Mahito, only for Mahito to impale him. So, like I said earlier, Sukuna does not like to be bothered, using idle transfiguration to call out Sukuna from Yuji. This leads to Mahito talking to the King of Curses. Flabbergasted that even touching Sukuna's soul can probably kill him, the stunned Mahito is told he's being spared for being funny earlier. Yuji takes this opportunity to pummel Mahito, still impaled. Yuji wants to kill Mahito, reminding him verbally and physically. Mahito is playing possum, however, but before he could kill the off-guard Yuji, Nanami comes in. Nanami believes Yuji when he says he's made to save people, but this resolve is different. He wants to kill Mahito for himself. This is not just on the behalf of others here. He also realizes only Yuji can handle Mahito, as Nanami can't damage or take hits from Mahito, unlike Yuji. Yuji's knowledge of the soul, stemming from being a vessel, is not something he can give to Nanami here. With Nanami heading off Mahito, they can both pummel Mahito at the same time. This plan actually does work, but only in inspiring Mahito with his near-death experience. He unlocks his domain expansion, his hands reaching out to grab the soul as his technique so cruelly twists. Being embraced by the hands of self-embodiment of perfection is a brush with death. Nanami is thanked by Mahito, as his lesson has sealed the sorcerer's demise. Yuji on the outside of his barrier, Nanami is inside it, with no domain of his own to combat Mahito. Nanami has a touching flashback, but all we need to know here is that he can't help but save people. Nanami can't accept the thanks for helping Mahito, as he already got the validation he needed from that flashback. But Yuji breaks through the domain. Since domains are more about keeping people in than out, Yuji can just bust right through. This was at least a little bit helped by Nanami here, as his resolution to die something that Mahito is not prepared for yet. The domain all about touching things, Sukuna is now furious by Mahito trespassing a second time into his soul. The epitome of indifference, Sukuna slashes Mahito, knowing he sits so far below him. The only exception to this hit list is Megumi, for some reason. A last stand type of attack, domain expansion leaves the user open, unable to domain expand again or use their technique for a period of time. There are exceptions, but that's for later. Yuji seemingly catches Mahito, but was duped, letting Mahito escape for the second time now. Nanami plans on pursuing Mahito, but Yuji is in rough shape, still obsessed with killing Mahito as he closes his eyes. Mahito, injured in the sewer, knows Sukuna should be weaker than Joko is, but his soul is transcendent. All Mahito really cares about right now is killing Yuji though. Nanami might have been resolved to die, but this curse would rather flee than die. Nanami thanks Yuji for saving him, explaining that Sukuna's soul is what damaged Mahito. When Yuji entered the domain, Yuji takes no credit here, as it was just Sukuna. More importantly, just like Mahito, Yuji's worldview is changing, reeling from new information, the same way that Mahito did when he saw Nanami be preparing for death. Yuji's idea of trying to give people proper deaths just isn't something he can shoot for anymore, as he blames himself for the death of Junpei. His unwavering faith is shattered, not even knowing what a proper death is anymore. Nanami tells Yuji people die all the time, and a proper death isn't really definite either here. Even with this being difficult, Nanami knows Yuji will keep at it anyway. Nanami furthers how people will need Yuji, just as he did against that curse. This is the weight he bears now as a Jujutsu sorcerer. The teacher that once misunderstood Junpei from before now confronts Shoto, still injured from Junpei's Shikigami. Both people know they are responsible for the death of Junpei here, and they will now be accountable.
Both you and I will have to live with the crime of killing Yoshino's heart for the rest of our lives.
Yuji with his mentors in front of him and his friends behind him metaphorically. Yuji promises he won't lose again until he kills Mahito. Mahito doesn't know it yet, but the heart of Yuji stands in front of his soul. Will the soul-altering hands kill Yuji, or will this curse be exercised by the killing fist of Yuji? This concludes part 1 of this series. Hopefully you guys love it, and I'll make more. I'll cover the rest of the season and season 2 as well if needed, so be sure to show your support. Like, comment, and subscribe if you feel like it. Join the Discord for early info on new videos and other cool stuff.